Good evening, class. My name is Nachiagama Swachisache. I am doing History and Luganda, and I'm a Luganda major. I'm here as the first spokesperson of Group 26, and our question is, write short notes on how you can use group work strategy to lecturing in order to facilitate teaching and learning in secondary school classes, implementing the competence-based curriculum. Okay, it requires us to use group work while enhancing teaching. Group work, okay, you have to know what group work is, how it is done, and when, and what are the strategies that you're following. Group work is a teaching method in which students are assigned to groups and work together on a task project. In this I mean, once you reach class, you have to make sure that you know the number of students in class, group them accordingly, not basing on their knowledge or performance in class, but mix them, the genius, the mediocres, okay, the convincing, the outstanding, the divine students, the marvelous, among others. Make sure that you know their abilities, capabilities. Don't just group a class because it is full of naughty students. Mix the naughty students with the good students and do not show them attitude. While assigning them into groups, you shouldn't just stand there like a portfolio. You have to make sure that you move around to monitor them and you maintain your class. It shouldn't be noisy. Once you realize that your class is noisy, make sure that you will assign each member a role to do. Each member is supposed to speak. If not so, one group member will do the speaking and the presenting. Each student is supposed to discuss, and these groups, their number tallies according to the actual number of the class. If you have over 100 students, I think to limit time, you form like a group of 10 students. Prior to, if you have only 85 or 50, you will use five people, and you mix them even in a gender form. The girls and the boys, not only boys and not only girls. And then group work, okay, it helps to, okay, it is used as a strategy for cognitive development. Cognitive development associates with the structure of the mind. Okay, it helps a student to attain and achieve more knowledge within the brain. Then it also aids management development. Okay, group work can aid a student to be a good manager. Okay, for example, not only in class or even outside class. It can also help one to be a good leader, because once you are in a group, you exercise all your talent, you can attain communication skills. Then the other thing is, group work has a lot of benefits in a way that it is important in education. It is a key factor in education since, okay, students learn more about others. It promotes even social interaction. It aids a lot of things. It aids communication. Furthermore, students are also able to get feedback from their other friends. Thank you for listening.
Good evening, class. I'm Namgema Shiba, doing History and Luganda, Luganda major, and I'm here from Group 26. Yeah, so I'm here. I'm going to start from where my colleague stopped. I'm going to start from examples of group work. So there are mainly three examples or types. Here we have the first one is called think, pair, share. Then the another one is called the jigsaw. Then the another one is called the random pairing. So I'm going to start from the think, pair, and share. So this is the great way for students to do group work. So here the students have to think of what they can do. Then they group themselves into two or three groups. Then they think of the work and interact to each other. Then after 3 minutes of brainstorming of what they have discussed, they come out and share out with a group. That's the first one. Here we've talked about thinking, then pairing, then even sharing. Then the second one is called the jigsaw. Here, it's the popular one. Yeah, it's the popular one whereby the teacher assigns a group, like the teacher can come out and start to appoint. Mercy, Jovia come out, then the teacher tell Jovia or Mercy to appoint out friends. So after appointing out friends, they come out and they like if they group in 2, 2 or 4. So here I was still talking about the jigsaw. Like after, remember the teacher comes out and picks the 2, then the 2 picks the others. After discussing what they've got, they come out and share with the class. Then the last one is random pairing. This is this can be one of the most effective way for interacting, to be divided in 2 pairs. So here the teacher can come out randomly and start counting like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then the teacher can be like the odd numbers come out. Then the teacher decides to pair out the odd numbers. So the teacher can use, like we have an example of a teacher came with candies, then he popped them in class. Whoever picked a green candy was made in that one group. So that's what I can say. I'm from group 26. My name is Namgema Shiba.
Good evening, class. I'm Naturunda Jovia Jingo from group 26. And as the first spokesperson stated the question, we're giving short terms about how to use group work or implementation of group work in class. So I'm going to talk about the part of implementing group work in the classroom. And actually the first phase of implementation is preparing for group work, because it is key that before you do anything in class, you have to first prepare for that thing. Not necessarily class, but everywhere you're going to do. Now, as my part is, specifically I'm going to talk about analyzing the class before group work. As you're going to handle group, remember you're grouping people. So you have to study them and study their characters before you're grouping them. So one of the first and key elements is, so as we're analyzing the class, we need to study different aspects of the class, starting from the number of students in your class. As a teacher, it is key that you get to know how many students you're handling or teaching in a class. It depends on this number that you're going to group these people. You go on to study the personal characters of each and every student in your class. That's to say, a normal class needs to have naughty and serious students. So as you're grouping these people, you have to think about those aspects. Then you go ahead to even look into the life characters or the personal characters of these people. For example, what are their attributes to group work? That will also guide you as you're going to group these people. You go ahead and you know how best can these people work in those groups. You get to know how good your class is, and this will help you get good results from group or attain your expected or prospected goal from your group. Thank you very much.
Good evening, class. My name is Nambilu Catherine. I'm doing history in Luganda, majoring in Luganda. I'm in group 26 and we are talking about group work. I'm going to continue with the implementations of group work, and my implementation is grouping the students. Before you group the students, first of all, you must know their backgrounds. What do I mean by backgrounds? One, you must know their ethnicity, how they behave in class, their capability of understanding, the knowledge, how they understand things in class, because we have the slow learners, the fast learners, and then the mediocres. So you have to understand all that. Then you have to decide on the size of the group. When I talk about deciding on the size of the group, it depends on the number of students in class. The larger the number of students, then the more the groups will be. If the students are few in class, then the groups will also be few, and the number of groups will also be few. So you have to also know the needs and diversities, productivity, and active participation of students. To reference on this, Gross-Davids 1993 emphasizes this, the decision of the size of the group. I'll continue with that. I'll continue with decision on how you divide the groups in class. Here you have to depend on the choice of the students. You can decide if the students can choose for themselves or you choose as a teacher. If the students are to choose, one can come up and then those who feel free and convenient with that student may join that group. To continue, the group, if the teacher is to decide on the group, the teacher will decide depending on the counting off of the students. That can be, you can use either even numbers or odd numbers. You can come to class and then count 1, 2, 3, 4. Those will be another group. Or you can say 1, 2, 3 even numbers go, then 1, 2, 3, 4, then odd numbers go. Then you can group the students according to gender, not specifically boys alone or girls alone, but you group them with a mixture so that you can give them inconvenience to know each other and also to interact in a well-mannered way. Then you can assign the groups before the class. Before you go for class, it will be so convenient if you assign the groups before you go to class rather than choosing the groups in class, because that will take a lot of time. Then finally, set ground rules for the group interactions. When I talk about setting ground rules, the teacher must set rules that will guide the group discussions or group work. In which way? The teacher must be able to tell only one student to talk, then the rest listen to the person talking. If it comes to presenting, one person, the teacher can decide one person to come and present in front so that there would not be a lot of noise in class. Then still, if not, 2 or 3 students may represent the others to give the presentation of their findings. That is all I have. Thank you very much.
Good evening, class. My name is Kato Hussein, doing Luganda and history, and I major in Luganda. Today we are handling the topic, or we are handling curriculum coursework, and our presentation is about group work. Now, I'm handling the part of implementing group work in the classroom, but it has been already introduced by my fellows. Now, I'm handling the part of designing the group activity. Here, when you are to design the group activity, the teacher or a teacher should make sure that he do the following things, or should consider the following factors. And the first factor is identifying instructional objectives. While identifying the instructional objectives, the teacher should make clear that he set the objectives he or she wants to achieve at the end of the group presentation. For example, these objectives may be like academic or social. And by academic, we mean things like, for example, a teacher may set a question about on the Bantu migration. Now, when we talk of the academic achievements or academic objectives, the interest or the intention of the teacher is to see that his or her students get knowledge of that particular topic. Now, when we talk of the social objectives, we mean things like listening skills. Remember, these students are working in what? In groups. Now, the teacher would like to see whether these students have acquired those skills. For example, listening skills, communication skills, and so on. And the other thing on identifying the instructional objective is that teacher should make clear that the activity should relate closely to the class or to the course of the class, and should design the activity in order to make the students learn, but not to just waste their time. Another phase or another factor is make the task more challenging. The teacher should put it in mind that while organizing or while implementing these groups, the teacher have to know that you have to first give your students questions that seems to be a bit more easy. Teacher should not just come like from the blue and say that I've given such and such a question. Why the question is very hard. You have to make sure that you give your students or your learners easy questions at the beginning in order to tap or to attract their interest in group work. But if you give them hard questions in the beginning, your students will never gain interest in group work. So, while handling group work, teachers, you should bear that in mind. Then another thing is assign group tasks that encourage involvement, interdependence, and a fair division of labor. Here, a teacher should make clear that the group work or the questions he or she sets are in line with those things. For example, all group members should feel the sense of personal responsibility, that the success of my group lies in my hands. For example, if I'm among the group members, I should feel that sense, that feeling, that the success of my group lies in my hands. That alone can encourage me to do better in order to see that my group succeed. So, teachers, you should take it in mind that while organizing or while implementing those groups, you should consider that. Then another thing is while considering that sense of personal responsibility, the teacher should allocate essential resources to the groups. As a teacher, you should not just give out questions, or you should not just form groups and leave them like hanging. You have to distribute necessary resources altogether to your students or to the group members in order to implement their work more effectively. Now another part is to decide on the group size. This has been already discussed about. Then another part is variety of voices needed is also discussed about. Now allow sufficient time for the group work. For example, if you have a lot of content to cover, you reduce on that content in order to allow or to give your students time to do their group work. But for example, there are some teachers who can come and distribute students in different groups, and then they give them questions. The question is a bit wide, and then you give them lesser time. No, you have to know that since I've given such a question, it's a bit wide. Now allow your students to get more time such that they can do their work completely effective. Now another part is to design collaborative work in multiple forms, and the last one is set group rules for group interactions. As a teacher or as a professional teacher, you should have to set various rules to govern those groups. Remember, students have different manners or they behave differently. So once you don't set those rules to be followed, your group work implementation may not come out effective as you wish altogether. So you have to set those rules that you have to follow such and such rules while handling your group work questions. Thank you very much. I remain teacher Hussein Kato, group leader, group 26.
Good evening once again. I'm Nachiru Ndajovia Jingo as before. This time round I've come back to present another phase of implementation of group work while in class. And this phase is monitoring. As we're dealing with a class, we're dealing with a group of people who, let me say, according to teachers, can't handle it all on their own. So by all means, they need monitoring. So this calls for a teacher's involvement or participation. Here, as the group work goes on, or having allocated the group task as the previous speaker said, you'll have to come in and monitor the activities of the class. This involves moving around the class, but although you're moving around the class, don't over-hover on the students. This can try to mean moving around class and standing on one group, then you insist on that group. As you can even make the students fail to get the necessary attention to do their work. By this, you need to trust your students as they're doing their work. This will give you enough courage to let them do what they do. You need to believe that they can do it all and they're going to do what is right. This also calls for you to trust your teaching, because you're giving them things that you once talked about. So if you trust your teaching and you trust the information you passed on to them, therefore you will be courageous enough to let them do it all on their own. Although I don't mean doing it on their own by you leaving them to do everything without any kind of monitoring. You need to move around the class, but not hover on a one specified group, but rather move around and monitor the activities of every group. As you're moving around, this is not the time when you're supposed to answer questions from groups, but rather leave them to do their tasks on their own. Leave them to continue with their discussions and arguments. As long as they are good and healthy arguments, it is good to let them do all their arguments on their own. And still, as you're monitoring the class, it requires you to limit the noise or limit the various activities, because at times students take this time of group work as time to do their personal businesses, such as chat or do any other business that is out of class. But as you're monitoring, it helps the student to concentrate on what is going on in their groups or in their particular groups. Still, as you're monitoring, you'll find situations whereby there are heated up discussions or heated up arguments among different groups. Please, as a professional teacher, you don't need to be sided, or you don't need to show your support to a particular group, but rather leave these students. All you need to do is to guide them into a proper way of argument. As you're guiding them, you don't need to show your side or need to clarify one point, but rather direct them into a proper way of arguing that will lead to a productive answer or to a productive response that you will need on later as they're presenting or passing on their information as discovered from the various groups. Thank you very much.
Good evening, class. My name is Naba Damile. I'm doing history and Luganda. On addition to that, there is presentation. Each group must present their findings. This is done through selecting one person in the group to present, or you can leave them to select for their own. That is all. I'm Naba Damile.
Once again, Teacher Hussein. Now I'm handling the last part, which is about ending the group task. Here, on ending the group task, the teacher should provide closure to the group activities. Students tend to see how their work in smaller groups, either it has been successful or not. So students also want to see whether they have contributed to the development of the topic or not. So a teacher should come up and give the closure or an ending to the group work or the group work task. Then in group work, while ending the group work, the teacher should consider the following factors. The teacher should know that while ending or while finalizing the group work tasks, students have to present either oral reports or written reports. And in oral reports, the teacher should choose one member or each group to give an idea and rotate through the arguments of the others. In written reports, the teacher should make sure that each group records their ideas and either present them themselves all have a group member to do so. On variation on this, to have groups record their conclusions on the section of the background. Then another factor is to connect the ideas raised to course content and objectives. Then it's also a responsibility of a teacher to connect the ideas, or to see whether the ideas that has been presented by the students are connecting directly to the course objectives or course content. So it's the responsibility of the teacher to see whether it comes out. And then the next factor is to the teacher, you should not provide too much closure. What do we mean by saying the teacher should not provide too much closure? Although the plenary session should wrap up all the group work, the teacher should feel free to leave some questions unanswered. Why do teachers have to leave some questions unanswered? It's like this. It helps students to do further discussion, research for the next class period. This openness reflects the nature of knowledge. Then the last factor is to ask students to reflect on the group work process. They may do so orally or in writing. This reflection helps them to discover what they learned, and how they functioned in their groups. It also gives you a sense of their response to group work. So that's the ending of the group work activity. Thank you.
Good evening, class. How are you? My name is teacher Namyenya Sylvia. I'm a teacher of history in Luganda, and I'm a Luganda major. So I'm going to take you through the benefits of group work. So as a teacher, you should engage your students in group work. Reason being that first, it instills confidence among students. How? Since it's group work and every member has to participate, this creates confidence and self-esteem amongst these students, that they can address masses, they are proud of themselves, they can stand and speak for themselves. So it is always good for a teacher to involve their students in group work tasks. And another thing is about skill sharing. When you involve or engage your students in group work, this helps them to gain some skills, because it is group work and it needs all students to participate. So it is easy for me to learn from my colleague. For example, if we've been given a number in mathematics and this requires to solve for x. And for example, for me, I'm not so certain about the formula, so I can easily go and make some research and inquire about it from my colleague in the same group. So from this, I gain some skills, and at the end, you may find out that I can solve that number too. Not because I knew it before, no, but because I have a colleague, so I can easily solve that number. So the third one is about it leads to efficiency and effectiveness. How? Since students gather and they have already done their research, so they come together, they gather. So in the case of any mistake a member made or a colleague made, it can easily be solved by the other members, because always two heads are better than one. So I would advise fellow teachers to engage their students in group work tasks. And another thing is about it leads to higher productivity. How does it lead to higher productivity? group work is always not so boring, just like individual work. Because if you are doing a group, if we're engaged into group work, we come together, we do the work, so we are always less stressed than doing the work alone. Sometimes you sleep, you leave the work undone, you know. So it is always good to engage students into group work. Thank you very much. I remain teacher Namyanya Sylvia, Luganda Major.
Good evening, teachers. My name is Chitanasa Leonard from Group 26. I'm a teacher trainee majoring in history and I minor in Luganda. I'm going to supplement on the advantages or merits of the group work. 1. Group work benefits students in the way that they can be able to collaborate with one another. This helps students to share ideas, to work together, and at the end of the day, students will be able to solve the problems as a team. Still, the group work helps to expose students to different perspectives, which improves on their communication skills. Another merit of the group work in education, it helps students to get to know how others think. This is achieved through working together and by sharing ideas and solutions. I remain Chitanasa Leonard from Group 26, History Major. Thank you so much.
Good evening once again. I'm here to give a conclusion of what my colleagues have talked about. You very well know that every journey has a beginning and an ending. In a nutshell, despite the fact that group work has a lot of implementations, it has merits, a lot of concepts, group work also has disadvantages. It is disadvantageous in a way that it hinders some people in class to clearly understand what other people have talked about. For example, the bright students may be very fast compared to the, I will not call them dull, okay, compared to the slow learners. You have to make sure that as you're teaching in class, there are various categories of learners. There are those who are fast learners, the slow learners, the mediocres. So group work hinders people's concentration. Since someone will not attain the concept at that very moment, then the other thing, it is unfair because some students may not be able to raise their concerns or their concepts since they have a shy bit of it. To mention but a few, group work also limits other people's thinking capacity, since some people, as they are in a group, they will just sit like passengers in a bus. They will just listen. They will not supplement or contribute anything. Thank you so much for listening. It has been Group 26. I remain Nechiaga Mastura Chisache, a Luganda Major. Have a blessed night.